Hi, and welcome to the ComSpark Magazine interview series. And I am Catherine Bashan with Bernovis, and we are partnering with ComSpark Magazine on a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Tom Dagger, the Chief Information Security Officer for ADM. And hi, Tom, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about how you got into the technology field and really why you took an interest in security?
Sure. So I've actually been a tech geek for, almost all my life. My first computer was a VIC-20, a Commodore VIC-20 back in the day. So I'm dating myself a little bit. I've had a couple of different careers prior to being in cyber. I was both in the military and law enforcement, but during both of those careers, I actually dabbled in, or in some cases directly worked in the technology field. And when I left law enforcement and joined full-time into technology, I had the great pleasure and honestly great luck to fall into a security role. And I've been in that ever since.
Okay, great. So now, over the years, how has the way you build and architect an effective information security and risk management program changed? And how has the pandemic and the new work from home initiatives changed the way you think of how you protect your digital ecosystem?
Yeah, so, it's been a heck of a journey, right, over the last couple of years and then accelerated over the last year. So, originally, and especially when I first started in the, early 2000s, we were still a bit of that moat and castle kind of mentality and security. And, layer defense always is and always will be a thing, but the layer was more about it's one place. It's my data center. It's where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And of course, over time, we've had the internet, and then we've had consumer apps, which have taken a lot of people think, well, if I can get my bank on my phone and do this so easy, why can't do all this at work, right? And then you add in the last year, which has just accelerated the digital, footprint of an organization. ADM is a good example. We have about 45,000 employees, close to 20,000 work in factories. So they never really left during the pandemic. But the rest of our knowledge workers, the vast majority did not work from home across the globe. And we had to accelerate that. And we did it. It was a bit of a challenge the first 30 days. Now I don't know how we're going to get people back in the office. But that change, the access to data anywhere at any time was a mantra before, but now it's a reality, right? It just is. And so securing that takes your mindset from systems and things to data. It becomes a very data-centric model, because that's what we're talking about ultimately, right? Is where's the data going? What's it going to happen? It's going to get out, even if, we use an MDM and I may have the data on my phone, but I can screenshot the data. Right. Now what does it do, right? So you really have to start thinking of a data-centric mindset and being as frictionless as possible. Again, we're driven by the business, we're driven by our own users, and quite frankly, humans are like, I like to say, water. They find the path of least resistance, and whether intentional or not, if we make that security too hard, in their face, they tend to find a way to go around it. So we try to really partner with that. And I think that change as well. It's not from an on-high commandment, outside of a few, if you're DOD maybe, of this is the way it's going to be. It's how do you partner, and then how do you bring people along on the security journey to make sure that they understand why they need to be secure.
Sure. And even like you had mentioned with the number of employees that you have and now spanning across over 170 countries and 800 locations, what are you doing to proactively protect your internal and external data and devices?
Sure. So we've certainly ramped up. I mean, we were already on this journey as well, but ramped up our visibility across our enterprise to make sure we understand. One of the things we recently had stood up just prior to the pandemic, that has turned out well, is a threat intelligence unit that I have that has really helped us, because just the sheer amount of attacks that are going on out there, and then the pivot with COVID, and to have that focus to know not only our peer industries, but our secondary peer industries. ADM is, we're involved in not only agriculture and nutrition, but we have a very large transportation unit. So there's specific attacks against transportation or manufacturing space, right? Things of that nature. Excuse me. So being able to focus on that, and then some things still haven't changed. I mean, our end users are still the primary targets because they're the easiest, right? Our endpoint devices that are now blown out to people's houses. I'm talking to you from my home, right? Those we have ramped up additional protections around that and monitoring. So, and then we've increased. I'm fortunate enough to have my own dedicated security operations center, and we've increased that capability because we've just seen an increase in attacks. And then education and awareness. Just this week, I put out another reminder to all of my work from home workforce what to look for, right? So just really have ramped up a lot of what we've had, and then we've accelerated a few strategic initiatives that maybe we would have done next year that we brought into this year and uplifted.
That's good. Yeah. And just to even kind of elaborate on what you had just mentioned, previously the security officer role used to be, largely technical. But since now it includes business enablement, risk management, and operational excellence. And so with the increase in cybercrime touching all areas of the business, how do you ensure that the communication around having a cyber aware culture is dispersed effectively from the top down within your organization when it comes to phishing and other things?
No, absolutely. Good question. So fortunate here at ADM, a couple of things. When I joined 2 years ago, I started a cybersecurity council that has senior leaders from across the enterprise, not just from within security. I did not want that. So I've got legal, I've got compliance, I've got audit, I've got some business representation. We meet monthly, and they're kind of my champions. In addition, I'm very fortunate that our CEO and CFO, are very supportive of the cyber activities that we do to protect the organization. I've board conversations and things of that nature. And then to cap that off, we have a very robust internal security awareness activity. Like I said, just did one recently. We really drive that. And then phishing, we do quarterly phish tests. I'd like to get the monthly. Some people do, but right now we're quarterly. But we have seen a steady decrease in people that are clicking things. We're really training people, so much so that actually for annual enrollment, right, for benefits, we're having to ensure that the message comes from internal, because if it comes from external, we get a flood of, hey, is this real or not real? Because it has links in it, and we don't want to click on it, right? They're trained, they're getting trained that well. That's good. But I think we've had a strong support from the organization, top down, again, CEO on down, the board on down, for those cyber activities, and presenting to them on a consistent basis of where we stand and what we're trying to do. It also helps that I've forged relationships with again, within my industry directly, and then peer industries, right? Second tier peer industries, where we're constantly communicating. And of course, their boards and senior leaders know that as well. And so that really helps foster, not just an ADM security mindset, but within our industry specifically, it's really fostered a collaborative cyber security mindset.
Sure, and that's great to hear. So can you elaborate on some of the most recent successful security projects that you guys have done?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like I said about data, being data-centric, right? Data marking for classification, to make sure that that's critical for people to understand what their data is, both manual and definitely, as I always tell people, automagically, right? So that they can know, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this particular data was confidential, or perhaps the highest for us is restricted data, right? So that is a big one. We're also employed, again, I started this when I got here, that they jokingly dubbed it total visibility with a trademark within my team. But I told the team, we can't protect what we can't see. Doesn't mean I'm going to collect every log, but I need to know what's out there in our environment, right? And again, you said it before, 170 countries, over 800 locations. I know there are dark spots, right? Mm-hmm. And we're working diligently to ferret those out. So continuously improving that. And then for us, again, the acceleration with the work from home and COVID, and endpoint detection and response, capability, which is something we did not have until recently, has really assisted us in ensuring protecting those assets that are now out in the field, out away from the central core, if you will, and not necessarily behind a lot of our central protection mechanisms. But again, as we are pivoting our capabilities, coupling with that, we're also going to things like a web proxy, right? Not an
Okay.
on-prem web proxy, but a cloud web proxy, where now they'll have the same protections, whether they're in the corporate environment or sitting at home, that they would have, there's no difference at that point. So these are things that either we have completed or accelerated and expect to complete in very near term to continue to secure things during this time.
Well,
And I'm
that's
very
great.
proud. My team's worked really, really hard.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I know you guys have a large team. And I guess with that being said, speaking about teams, the current unemployment rate is, at 13.5%, and we're still at a significantly lower unemployment rate in technology. So, and it's also been predicted that there's going to be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity positions by next year due to the small labor pool. So, while you're trying to stay ahead of hackers, how do you recruit, develop, and maintain your staff when the demand for cybersecurity talent continues to increase?
No, that is definitely a challenge. It's a challenge for ADM as anybody else, right? Well, we have a couple of avenues. First of all, and we're still doing it this year as well, even with COVID. But we have a very strong intern program. So we do internships with several colleges now. Again, ADM for our technology, our major core hubs in the United States are in Illinois and in northern Kentucky, the Cincinnati area. So we partner with some of the major universities in those areas, same thing. And that has been very fruitful. So that helps us get young talent, right? Which we always want to bring in that young, fresh talent, new ideas, new ways of thinking, and hopefully, have them build their career over a long term. And then for that more experienced talent, a lot of it is just making ADM attractive, right? Because there are competitors, right? And we talk about critical infrastructure. I mean, power, water. Well, I don't think there's a more critical infrastructure when you think about it than our food supply, right? We've got to eat. We can go without water for up to food for 7 days. Water shorter, so I give water a slight nod. But when it goes to food, right? That's. I mean, we all have to eat. And we are at ADM able to talk about that journey. You can come into a very mixed environment, quite frankly, right? We're a 118-year-old company. We have some technology that is not as cutting edge, but then we also have some extreme cutting edge technology. So you get to come in and from a cyber perspective, it's actually quite fascinating. How many people still get to try to protect a mainframe, right? And understand that while they're also working, we have a massive Azure cloud infrastructure. So you're going to learn it all, right? Which gives you different mental techniques to do that. So we do that. I mean, price and all those things that, as far as that goes, people's wages and stuff, that's everybody deals with that. I think it's more about what can you show from a culture, and ADM's culture is phenomenal. It's a great culture to work in, and the things that you're going to do. I remember a former job that I'm still good friends with many of my peers from that job. We had coined a term that I brought to ADM. We're doing cool things with cool people. That is just what you want to do, right? Everyone get up every day, do cool things with cool people. And I think we do bring that at ADM. And so that's a big part of it. And then peers, right? I mean, my market in Cincinnati is different than the market in Chicago. That's different. Where I spent most of my cyber career in Atlanta is a different market, right? But what I've done in each is foster relationships, like I said, with my peers. And quite frankly, at some point, they all kind of rotate around, right? Because you have great resources that they may hit a certain level where you don't have a place for them within the organization, but your peer or friend over at another company does. You're like, hey, I've got a great engineer. They're just looking for that next step. It's not here for me. Do you have anything? And vice versa. And it kind of works its way around that. I've done that here in the Cincinnati area, did it a lot when I was in Atlanta, and we're doing that in the Chicago area as well. So I think tapping that, and I would say that to any of my peers, don't be afraid or hesitant to let your people, if they want to move into an organization that you have a peer relationship with and they're a great company, let them go. Because I guarantee it's going to come back in spades as they continue to rise in their career. And then they might come back when maybe you have a director role a couple of years later and that person's coming back, that kind of thing. So it's a combination of all those things. This is a passionate topic for me, as you can tell.
Yeah, sure. No, I completely agree. It's relationships, especially within technology, are very tight, within various communities. So I completely agree.
And I actually would add a last one here that I think is my partners, like you. Right? Partners are in a lot of locations where they know that there may be right? Or
Right.
great openings if you have people. And I think that's for some people, they don't think about that. They only think of a transactional basis with their partners. And again, for me, it's about relationships. And you might go, hey, I've got a guy that's great, but he's just, again, I have no place for him to go. If you guys know of anybody out there, and I've actually had success in both directions with that, with my partners, in helping us ferret out good organizations for people to go to, or good people that they've hit their limit, at their place, and they're looking for that next step. So
Sure, it's all about timing, and you never know unless you bring it up.
Right.
So, well, good. So, I guess just to finish it up, can you tell us a little bit more that since we're moving to more of a digitally connected world, what are some of the latest cybersecurity trends that you're watching, and how could those developments impact your business moving forward?
Sure. So for ADM, there's a couple of areas that we really focus on. Industrial IoT, right? We have a huge footprint on our industrial side. And again, for those that are watching that are dealing in that, a lot of these systems are designed for 20-year lifespans. They're not designed to be upgraded, right? So, and those are some new attacks. We have a lot of attacks going against our infrastructure in that direction. So protecting that, right? And it's the consumerization of technology, whether it's hardware applications that are driving into that, right? That's why we call it the IoT, because you're seeing a lot of things that I wouldn't call necessarily enterprise ready, but they're kind of sexy, they're cool, they're relatively cheap, you can get them out quick, and then all of a sudden you find out you have a challenge. And I see that both in my operational space and in my enterprise space, right? Again, what I mentioned earlier about people they want to bring in an app, right? They can go out there and good example, WhatsApp, right? I'm sure a lot of people use it. I use it personally, but WhatsApp's very clear. WhatsApp is not an enterprise solution. They're very clear about that. There's no enterprise capability. There's no enterprise dashboard, but I have people want to use it. There are business mechanisms. I can tell you in South America, for example, huge mechanism for how businesses communicate. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you secure? Yes, the mechanism itself is secure, the transport, but it's my data. Right? It's the organization's data. How do you track that? How do you do that? If you're making business decisions, how is the business upstream aware of the communication you're making, right? That's just one small example of some of the challenges we're seeing. That as people are getting much more comfortable with consumer technology, and even if it is secure, how does it actually work in an enterprise?
Right.
So that when someone leaves, or if there's an issue, or heaven forbid there's a breach, I suddenly can't do that. And the same thing really goes with as we're going cloud. And like I said before, we're big Azure, right? How do you ensure whether you're using Azure or Salesforce or any other large, third party, that if there's an issue, how do you get the data, right? Because it's easy enough to say you define it within your contract, and then there's certain, delineation points. Mm-hmm. But you have an issue, whether it's a breach or heck, it could just be a service interruption. Senior management doesn't care about that contract. They want the service back up, right? So I think these are a lot of the challenges that we're seeing as we're, trusting but releasing a lot of what you used to have in direct control, right? That you're trusting to your third-party partners, mm-hmm. and whether it's security or just operations. So these are the things that we focus on. And then I think finally, as you mentioned before about a CISO role, not just technical anymore, right? Talking to the business. How do you enable the business? How do you, get closer to the consumer through those consumer apps or digitization? But also, quite frankly, I have a fiduciary responsibility, right, to the organization. I have a P&L, and more on the L, I guess, if in the parlance of finance. But how do I ensure that going to the cloud, because the business may see this great thing going to the cloud that I now have to secure, that again, if they're not considering that, it is my responsibility to go with them and say, okay, these are the minimum business requirements we have, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Here's what they're going to charge you for that. Because a lot of people assume, hey, I'm going to go to Amazon or Azure and they secure us. Well, no, they don't. They secure themselves from you. Right. And so walking beside them to say, here's what you need to understand. The bottom line impact from a fiduciary perspective of going to the cloud is not just saving workload space, maybe, but now we're going to layer on security that you want, that they support, but it's this, and this. And now suddenly perhaps that return on investment isn't as good. Doesn't mean it's not worth going for other reasons, but it helps give them that big picture. So again, I'm kind of looking at all of that right now from that perspective. So it keeps me busy.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I bet it does. Well, and that's all we have today. Tom, thanks so much for joining us, and you've provided a ton of great insights and feedback. So we really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. And for more one-on-one interviews, please visit comspark.tech for additional interviews.